Hello, Chattanooga. You're listening to All New Nooga Radio. You're on NoogaRadio.com, 92.7, YouTube, Facebook, however it is that you are listening. We appreciate you. A lot of things happening in the NFL in terms of the officiating. The NFL has revised their helmet-to-helmet contact rule, and they've made it more all-encompassing. And the reports are from the various teams in the league that have been briefed and educated on the nature of this rule. They don't like it. They don't like it, and it's confusing. And I can understand why if you're a player. All of these rules are nothing but frustrating. DJ Swearinger, the safety for the Washington Redskins, believes that this rule, this new helmet-to-helmet rule, is killing football, which doesn't really tell us anything in terms of the fact that, like, every new safety rule that they add, the players generally tend to think that it's killing football. They do. I mean, it's just, and I get that, because obviously, to make the game safer, you're going to have to change the game in a fashion that inherently destroys what it is. And I understand that frustration that the players have always had. I think that the players also understand the league is trying to keep them safe. The issue is when the rules move so far ahead of the safety that the players don't see, A, how any of this is making them safer, and B, how the rules are supposed to work at all. Like, if you could explain to the players how it's making them safer, they would get it. If you could explain to them how they were supposed to play in the confines of the rule, they would also get it. This rule is weird because it puts them in a place where it's neither, where guys are going, well, we do make helmet-to-helmet contact on plays. There was a report that they brought the rule to the Philadelphia Eagles camp, and the Eagles were left, quote, frustrated at the explanation of the rules. It's not at all clear what is and isn't a violation of this rule, and I've told you this before. This rule, the penalty for violating this rule is steep. The penalty for violating this rule could be suspension and an ejection from the game, which is going to cost you money. And it's going to be something that I don't think most players are doing intentionally. And you've got to deal with the fact that you can't ask a guy, an elite athlete who's been doing something one way his entire life, to suddenly play football in a completely different and non-threatening and safer way. Of course, this is killing football. And I'm okay with it if it's a good thing. Like, if you can go and watch football and it's different and it's not as violent, but guys are legitimately being kept safer, then I can see that. And I conceded long ago that a lot of these rule changes are actually necessary to make sure that the quality of life of the players after they play the game is better. But you've got to be clear here. The game of football is a naturally violent game. And at some point, you have to say, guys deserve the right to choose to play this game. They have the right to choose to put their bodies at risk and put their bodies at harm. And I think you've got to let them choose and just say, hey, this is what this is. Like, notice a sport like boxing, where there's also a lot of brain trauma, where there are also reports of CTE. We're not trying to make boxing safer. There is a respect and there is a notion and an idea of what boxing is. Boxing is a violent sport. Mixed martial arts, no one is trying to make MMA, the UFC, safer. They have rules to keep you safe so far as they can. In boxing, you can't punch somebody in the back of the head. If a guy takes a knee, if he goes down because he's been knocked down, you can't hit him. Same thing in the UFC. I mean, as violent as we think the UFC as being, if a guy goes down and he's a downed opponent, which is he's down on one knee or he's down on his legs, you can't just knee him in the head. We all understand that to be dangerous. And I think that there are some precautions that you can take to make the game as safe as you can make it. But at the same time, there's only but so safe you can actually make it. And I think the NFL is caught in a rock and a hard place here where they are trying so hard to make the game safe that they're actually making the game unplayable, unrefereeable, maybe even uncoachable, and certainly unwatchable. There's no doubt in my mind about it. So I don't know what the league is going to have to do here, but I think that maybe before this season, they might have to walk this one back. I'd love to see them implement the rule in the preseason. Put the rule in a place where the games don't matter and we're trying to figure this out. And then if it's working, we can try and roll this into the regular season. But maybe give it a year before we go out here and say, this is the point of emphasis for today. We have in a very short span of time created a rule that is confusing to players. They don't know how aggressive to be. They don't know what is going to count as intentional helmet-to-helmet contact, and it puts them in a bad spot. I'd love to see the players really go up against the league on this and not just say stuff to the media, because that's just complaining. That doesn't help anybody. Really tell the league that they don't understand. The league seems to think that as long as the referees understand what the rule is, that's the only group of people that needs to understand. If the players don't get the rule, they're not going to play well. They're just not. Like we've come to grips as fans that we watch a violent game. And I think players have come to grips as players that they play in a violent game. And coaches have come to grips that they're coaching a violent game. In the same way that, again, a boxer knows what he's doing is violent, knows what he's doing is dangerous. People have died in the boxing ring. It's not a rare occurrence. There was a British fighter earlier this year that died the day after he won a fight, but he took a pounding. It happens. And I'm not saying, well, that's okay, but there's an idea that, okay, we've sanctioned this and no one can be held liable if you are playing a dangerous game on purpose. A number of guys have looked at what this is and have left. There are players who have left the game of football. The game's too dangerous. Calvin Johnson, the game hurts too much. Calvin Johnson was in physical pain constantly. And Tiger, and he at the prime of his career, Calvin Johnson walked away, like the peak of his prime. Why? His body was in constant pain. I mean, if you're playing through the pain and if you're playing through the danger and you're choosing to do so, I don't have a problem with adults saying, I want to play this game. I know what the dangers are. I think that that's where the league has to be better. I think the league has to inform its employees about the dangers of the sport that they are involved in. And then if guys want to stay and play, they'll stay and play. And the talent level is so high, I'll stick around and watch who's left. But no one's forcing players to play football. You can't put the game in a place where the guys who actually want to be there don't know how to play. It's a weird spot. The league's in a bad spot. They've got bad will built up over the years because they've done this to themselves. They knew that football was dangerous and they tried to hide it initially. They tried to bury it, and they tried to bury anybody else who would admit it. That's problematic. So the league hasn't done themselves any favors, but now they're overcorrecting. They're overcorrecting in the other direction by putting players in a position where they're playing a game and they don't know what to do. They don't know what's breaking the rules and what isn't. And here's the problem, is if you hesitate in a game like football, you're actually in more danger, right? Like if you hesitate when you know you should just hit somebody, you leave yourself exposed to all kinds of injuries. And offensive players usually protect themselves by getting behind their pads, which involves lowering your head. Is that breaking the rules or is it not? That's not even getting into the fact that we've got a number of new referees. Since 2014, the league has turned over 70% of the referees. That's a lot of referees to go over. So apart from the fact that we're not even sure that the referees are going to be able to make the right calls, not because they're bad, but because they're still young and they're still getting it, and young by referee standards. Like because being an NFL referee is tough. You're refereeing a game that moves faster than almost any game on earth. I would say possibly hockey moves faster than the NFL. That's it. As far as collision sports go. I mean, you're asking these guys to do a lot. And I don't know if this is smart for the league to try and push this fast without knowing if the referees understand, if the players understand. The league has to do something. That much I do agree on. I just think the method that they're going about doing this, it's not smart. It really isn't. And I think someone might end up being hurt worse than what we realize, in large part because we're looking for the one rule that fixes this. And because football is a dangerous game, just naturally, there probably isn't just one rule that fixes it, or even one set of rules that fixes it. I'm pretty sure the only thing that you need to know is football. What we need is to acknowledge that this game is dangerous and then go, okay, well, someone has got to be able to legally consent to play this in the same way that you legally consent to boxing. There's no way to make boxing safer. There's no way to make MMA safer. You try the best you can. You say you can't hit downed opponents. There are punches that you cannot throw in mixed martial arts. There are also things you can't do in boxing. I remember the Floyd Mayweather-Conor McGregor fight. Conor McGregor was rabbit punching Floyd Mayweather in the head, and the referee had to tell him to stop that. There's no rabbit punching in boxing. You're not allowed to do it. Right? So Conor McGregor already had to change up his game plan a little bit. He thought he was going to get away with the rabbit punching. You can't do that. There are rules in even the most violent of sports. We might just have to categorize football as one of those sports. We might have to categorize hockey there too. I mean, hockey's got a lot of these same issues. Right? CTE is an issue in a lot of sports. The CTE is an issue in soccer too, by the way. You make it as safe as you can. And then at some point you go, this is the nature of the game. This is as safe as we could actually make it. And you have to back away. And anyone who consents to play the game, playing it as safe as you could actually make it, and realizing that even then the game is still dangerous, I think that that's fair. It's the same thing with bungee jumping. Like, there's a risk with bungee jumping. I will never go bungee jumping because you sign a form that says, hey, I understand that there's a risk in bungee jumping. That rope might break and I could be gone. Or people who go skydiving, right? Like, there's a chance I jump out of this plane and that parachute doesn't open properly. I'm gone. I'm gone. So you have to understand that and go, okay, well, I'm choosing to sign this anyway. I'm choosing to go skydiving because despite the risk of death, it's fun. People find it fun. I don't find it fun. I think you're a loon if you jump out of a plane on purpose. The only way you're getting me to jump out of a plane is if the plane's going down and I don't have a choice. If you jump out of a plane on purpose for just the kicks and giggles, I think you're nuts. But people do it for fun, and they understand the risks, and they sign the waiver. Right? Like, if you sign the contract and you take the money in the NFL and you understand the risks, then I don't think we need to keep tweaking the rules to try and make it safer and safer, but then you make it not football anymore. There's a balance there. What do you think? The phone number is 423-800-8949, 800-8949. I really want to know what you think. For me, I think you just have to acknowledge this is about as safe as we can make this. The game of football has never been safer. And we still have the problem with CTE, with concussions. It's not like concussions don't happen. And that's not even counting the other issues that football players end up having with their joints and their bones. And, you know, all the drugs and painkillers that guys end up taking to take the kind of pounding that an NFL season demands. It's a lot. you're asking a lot of people. You talk about like an opioid crisis, like NFL players are hooked on opioids like you wouldn't believe, because that sport is incredibly painful to play. I don't know that you can make this any safer. But in fairness, there are plenty of dangerous jobs that they've made very safe, relatively speaking. Like historically, this is as safe as working on an oil rig will ever be. 2018, working on an oil rig. It's still an incredibly dangerous job. It's still taxing. The reason why oil rig workers make a ton of money is because you are putting your life on the line. And I think NFL players make a lot of money because they're putting themselves at risk in large part. And as long as everybody is informed of the situation, I personally don't see what is so wrong about saying this is as safe as we can make it. We can't make it any safer than this and have it still be football. You could make boxing safer, but would it still be boxing? Right? Like if you said, okay, there's a lot of head trauma in boxing. You can punch each other, but nobody hit anybody in the head. Is that still boxing? Because I don't think so. Right? Like we think of boxing as that sport where people hit other people in the head. And certainly that is a large part of the sport, but also getting hit everywhere else hurts too. Right? Like I boxed for 2 months and I took a shot to the liver that I thought I was going to die. You would almost prefer to be hit in the head. But if you take away the tactic of hitting someone in the head, could you reasonably call that boxing? I actually don't think you can. They've made boxing as safe as they can make boxing. If you are a mixed martial artist or someone who does karate or judo or wrestling, there are risks to all of those sports. And if they change it to try and make it safer by wiping out the essence of what it is, and look, the essence of what football is, I mean, if you boil it down, what do people think of when they think of football? They think of collisions. Like the essence of football is a collision. You can't take away collisions because then you don't have football. I watched flag football. They had some flag football league on the NFL network, and I was watching it. It actually is really fun and entertaining to watch, but the game doesn't have that pop. There's something missing, and it's the contact. It's the fact that you play the game of football with your mind and with your body, and that the punishment for not fully engaging with your mind is punishment to your body. That's the kind of sport football is. It's a brains and brawns kind of game. If you take away the brawn side of it, you've got a fundamentally different game. And it's the same thing with boxing. Like the reason why they call boxing the sweet science is because you participate in boxing with your mind. With you, if you don't mentally understand what your opponent's going to do, you don't understand angles, you don't understand strategy, guess what? You're going to be toast in a boxing ring. You're going to be looking up at the lights from the canvas. Like, if anyone has ever played football and just been destroyed by a crackback block, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't see it coming and it catches you off guard, you feel like you've been run over by a truck. But part of it is mentally preparing so that you don't get run over by the truck. If you take away the fear of the truck, you have a different game. You inherently have something that is not football. That's what the players, I think, are frustrated about, because they made it to the NFL after their entire lives playing football. So you don't get to rearrange this and make it something else, at least so far as they're concerned. I will say this. People have talked about football being ruined forever. And fans have said, well, I'm not going to watch, and they're sissifying the league. You'll watch. That's a fact. I mean, you've never turned off before. You will consume football in whatever form it takes. Because understand, if this does have a degree of success in the NFL, it's coming to college and it's coming to high school. It trickles down. So if you say, well, I'm not an NFL guy, I don't watch the NFL, you might want to pay attention because it's coming to a college campus near you. Listening to all new Nuga Radio, newsradio.com here on 92.7 FM. What's with Keon Rose? Thank you for joining me today. We'll talk about Kirby Smart and what's he doing in the SEC next.
Traffic, news, and information. Nuga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
2 men fell off the edge of a Suck Creek Mountain trail. One of them later died at the hospital, according to the Marion County Sheriff. Rescuers recovered the 2 men Saturday afternoon, both victims reportedly in their 20s. Grundy County deputies pull over William Dunwoody on Friday night for driving on a suspended license. The reports say the 62-year-old's car was searched after deputies say they got consent. Inside, deputies report they discovered 14 grams of methamphetamine. Dunwoody taken to jail and a female passenger arrested on unrelated warrants. And we usually ignore our dogs when they start barking, but maybe we should listen more often. Chattanooga homeowner heard her alerted dog, went to see what was going on. WRCB reports she found a suspicious man prowling the neighborhood. Police arrived. Kudo Coleman charged with theft of property and possession of burglary tools. Good dog. Val St. John for Nuga Radio. News Talk 92.7 Action News now.
Chattanooga Morning News with Russ and Val. Weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on Nuga Radio. 92.7 FM.
Chattanooga weather.
Staying quite muggy out there through your nighttime hours. Could see a stray shower or storm overnight. Lows into the lower 70s. For Tuesday, scattered showers and storms becoming more likely for the afternoon. Highs settling into the lower 80s with unsettled and milder weather expected through the midweek. For lunch or dinner, come to Guthrie's, home of the original golden fried delicious chicken finger with their special world famous sauce. Open daily. Locations in Trenton, Signal Mountain, and Ringgold. Go get Guthrie's. It's always good. And I'm Snorre Sheen, 12 Chief Meteorologist, Patrick Moore.
Nuga Radio 92.7.
I got my business up and running, and it's already expanding. I got lucky. Lucky because I found Signal Voice and Data. Signal Voice and Data can incorporate all of my business information sharing and communications seamlessly, keep my costs down, and let me work more productively with endless connectivity no matter where I might be. That's called working smart, not hard. Go to signalvoicetn.com and bring the future of communication to your business today. Signalvoicetn.com.
Hey, dude, check this out. Have you ever seen one so big?
Whoa, look at the size of that.
Look at this little itty-bitty one.
Wow, that's really small.
They have them big, small, and everything in between. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives at the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. We're talking about over 40 brands of knives, including Benchmade, WR Case & Sons, Booker, and all the Frost Cutlery brands. Now, Sam, you've been to the cutlery shop. Is it amazing?
Spectacular. The knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. They have knives, swords, kitchen knives, ammo, and reloading supplies, plus survival gear.
It's the knife shop at Frost Cutlery. Open 7 days a week. Hey, girls, you're going to love this. We're going to the knife shop.
Hey, let's not tell them they have ammo and loading supplies.
The knife shop at Frost Cutlery opens 7 days a week. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives. You're going to love the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. The knife shop.
And tell them David Toulis sent you.
Do you hear that? That, my friend, is not what you're thinking. That is the new 2018 Indian Chieftain Dark Horse. Yeah, Indian. Indian motorcycle is more than a bike. It's an experience, an American icon. And Indian Motorcycle of Chattanooga is the only place you'll find their new 2018 line. Are you ready to ride? Join the club. Go to Indian Motorcycle of Chattanooga. Just look for the sign, 153 and Amnicola. Indian Motorcycle, the true American original.
You want more business. You want to increase your bottom line. You want to spend less on advertising, imaging your business, and general expenses. You need Trade Bank. When you join Trade Bank, you'll get the benefit of free advertising in our monthly magazine, tradebank.com, emails, and mailouts. Join Trade Bank now and receive your Trade Bank debit card with trade credits to spend any way you want. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call now for a free consultation. 877-2202. That's 877-2202. Trade Bank of Chattanooga.
Chattanooga Paint and Decorating would like to remind you it's so hot out there. And guess what? Your deck is taking a beating. It's probably starting to show wear. If you're hosting friends, get your deck entertainment ready with a fresh coat of stain and protect it from heat, sun, and rain with a quality sealant. If you want to get to work, Chattanooga Paint and Decorating want to help you. For exterior paints, stains, sealants, and supplies, stop by Chattanooga Paint and Decorating today on Hicks and Pike across from Valvoline or online at ChattanoogaPaint.com.
Nuga Radio.
Are you brain dead? Still voting for pathetic liberals? Take 3 hours of Sean Hannity from 3 to 6.
Nuga Radio.
Then call us in the morning between 9 and 11.
92.7
Nuga Radio.
Kirby Smart's recruiting for 2019. It's going well, by the way, if you're asking. Kirby Smart has got the chops of being just an absolute great. And I wonder if that dominance is going to continue as Jeremy Pruitt gains some clout at Tennessee. Because if Jeremy Pruitt and Tennessee do well this season, I'm not so sure that they will. Because, I mean, they've just got a whole lot to change inside of that organization. I think it's fair to give Jeremy Pruitt 3 years before you really start to jump on his back about any losing that might end up happening, because he's having to overturn a lot of stuff. I mean, like the training staff had to go, the strength and conditioning coaches had to go. He's turning over absolutely everything to make sure that there isn't the stink of Butch Jones left. So he's doing all that. Like, there's going to be some growing pains involved in all of this. I get it. But Jeremy Pruitt is still an incredible recruiter. He's a 2-time Recruiter of the Year award winner. The Jeremy Pruitt absolutely can recruit his pants off. But the fact of the matter is, a large part of Kirby Smart's early success at Georgia has been the fact that Kirby Smart apparently can recruit with the best of them. And I wonder how much Kirby Smart's dominance is going to continue if Jeremy Pruitt and Tennessee win some ball games, right? Like, if they win, they've got a good season, say they win like 8 games, and they win some big ones, some thrillers, maybe some games that they have no right to win. Maybe they're close with Alabama instead of getting stomped like we think that they might. If they have a good season, Jeremy Pruitt's going to cut into that. But as it stands right now, the best recruiter in the SEC East is Kirby Smart. Georgia has, so far as 2019 recruiting is going, Georgia has more than twice as many top 150 recruits as the rest of the SEC East put together. They've got 10 commitments from the top 150. The rest of the SEC East put together, they got 5. They've got 5. They've got 10 4-stars. Like, Tennessee's next. Like, Tennessee's doing the second best in recruiting. But the gap between Kirby Smart so far, right now, and Jeremy Pruitt for 2019 recruiting is a chasm. Is a canyon. And actually, that's got nothing to do with Jeremy Pruitt and everything to do with Kirby Smart. I actually wonder about recruiting. I've got to find a recruiter and talk to them. What do you tell these kids? How are you getting more kids to Georgia? How are you getting double the rest of the division? What are you promising? And it's not one of those situations where Butch Jones came in early, and Butch Jones recruited really well. But then a lot of that is you look back on it, and Butch Jones was not telling everybody the truth. Butch Jones did not tell Jalen Hurd the truth. It really hurt his relationship with his players. So if you're going to be recruiting, you've got to be telling the truth, but players don't seem to feel like Kirby Smart is being dishonest. So how is he doing it? What is the secret? I'm not sure, but Kirby Smart is dominating. And I really want to see the recruiting wars heat up going into the future, right? Jeremy Pruitt versus Kirby Smart. And that's not even including the West. And can you divert enough talent away from Alabama? Can you divert enough talent away from LSU? And I'm not saying Ed Orgeron's even a great recruiter, because he isn't. But LSU kind of recruits itself. All the kids that want to play at LSU, you're not convincing them to go anywhere else. Like, generally speaking, the kids that want to wind up at LSU wind up at LSU. It's basically one of those schools. It's got fantastic brand recognition, and players just want to be there. Especially a lot of those Louisiana kids. You're just not convincing them to leave the state of Louisiana. You know, I mean, their parents are LSU fans. LSU might have one of the strongest legacies, because I've seen kids leave Georgia, go to Alabama. I've seen kids leave Tennessee, go to Alabama, go to Auburn. But people leave Florida all the time. Not many, but people leave Florida. People tend not to leave Louisiana very much. If they're a high recruit, they still tend to wind up at LSU for whatever reason. Because LSU is one of those schools that just recruits itself. So we're not even talking about what LSU is capable of doing, what Nick Saban is capable of doing, what Jeremy Pruitt is capable of doing. Now, like, Kirby Smart is still cutting into all of that. And I want to know how. Like, what is he telling them? Because he's been on fire since day one. And the reason why no one's concerned, like, is Kirby Smart's first couple of years a fluke? Because that's something that you could concern yourself with, given the history of people that come off of the Saban tree and have their opportunity to be a head coach. Up until recently, that was not a recipe for success. So what's different? A lot of it has to do with recruiting. I love Dan Mullen. God bless him, but he's not a recruiter either. Dan Mullen is a developer of talent. Dan Mullen is going to still wind up, it looks like, getting the second-rate guys at Florida, even though he's at Florida. There's no reason you should be at Florida and can't get top talent players. No reason. But Dan Mullen's going to still wind up with them. And he's still going to develop players the way he's always developed them. Dan Mullen's fantastic. Trust me, I've got no complaints with Mr. Dan Mullen. He's about as good as they come. The issue is, who can chip into this dominance that Kirby Smart has? And I'm going with Jeremy Pruitt. Who else could it actually be? When you look at the way that Georgia has been recruiting, and this is before the early signing period. We're like less than 5 months to the early signing period, and Georgia has commits from 2019's top 150 recruits. They have 10. The rest of the SEC East has 4 put together. Right? They've got 10 4-stars. The only other school that's close is Tennessee and South Carolina. Florida's not doing anything under Dan Mullen. Florida State usually chips into that recruiting pool. They haven't. Miami usually cuts into that recruiting pool. They haven't. And Kirby Smart is doing something that is absolutely incredible. And we don't really have records necessarily for this kind of thing, but it is wild to me how good Kirby Smart is as a recruiter. I am so much more impressed with Kirby Smart as a recruiter than a coach. And to be clear, I'm very impressed with Kirby Smart as a coach. You're listening to All New Nuga Radio at NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. I want to shift back to the NFL. Andrew Luck is encouraged by the health of his shoulder at camp. The reason why I'm concerned with Andrew Luck is because I do talk a lot of Titans football, and the AFC South is going to be some kind of bloodbath. It is, to me, the toughest conference in the NFL, the toughest division, rather, in the NFL. I mean, tougher than the NFC West? Tougher than the NFC East, that's going to be pretty tough? Tougher than the NFC North, which is usually pretty tough? It's going to be the toughest one. If Deshaun Watson is healthy, Houston is hard to beat. We don't have a very large sample size for Deshaun Watson, but what we do have is a team that can score like gangbusters. Their defense isn't very good. Their offensive line stinks, but as long as Deshaun Watson is the guy under center, that team, anything looks possible for them. And God forbid J.J. Watt stay healthy for an entire season. And what are you actually going to do? Because that's part of the reason why their defense has struggled. The pass rush has struggled. They rely a lot on Clowney. But imagine if you had Clowney and J.J. Watt, which is the dream that we've never actually realized, with those two guys being on the field at the same time. When J.J. Watt was healthy, Clowney was always injured. Now that Clowney's healthy, J.J. Watt hasn't played more than 8 games in the last 2 seasons. So it's tough. And he's had the back surgery. Like, I don't know if J.J. Watt actually will ever be the same. But if he can, and that defense can look anything like its old self, and then Deshaun Watson can take that offense to the level anywhere near where he took it last year, Houston's tough. Jacksonville's tough. Sure. Do they have to overcome Blake Bortles and his existence as Blake Bortles? Yes. Yes, they do. But Blake Bortles has shown that for 3 to 4 game stretches, Blake Bortles can look like an actual competent NFL quarterback. Combine that with Leonard Fournette and the fact that he's a bruiser up the middle, he gets them yardage on the ground, and of course, if Leonard Fournette is anywhere near the goal line, Jacksonville scored a touchdown. 6 yards and in, that's Leonard Fournette territory. He jumps over people, he runs through people, he makes a lot of people look really, really dumb. Then, of course, Jacksonville's defense. It's the most horrifying defense in the NFL, and because Jacksonville decided they weren't going to move on from Blake Bortles to try and get like a real quarterback, everybody that's on that defense last year is still there. That's terrifying. Then you look at Tennessee, the Titans, the coaching change, the offense that's going to be very different. Maybe things open up a lot more for Mariota, because last year was about as restrictive and stupid an offense as any of us have ever seen, with a quarterback that I think has way too much talent to waste in an offense like the Titans ran a year ago, that exotic smash mouth foolishness that they tried to run for 3 years and pretend like that was a real offense. Never did like Mike Mularkey. It just absolutely was nuts to me. I don't understand any of that. Tennessee, they're going to be good. They were a playoff team last year also. And then, of course, Indianapolis. And they're not very good without Andrew Luck. But if Andrew Luck's there, they're going to be very good. Andrew Luck's shoulder, he thinks it feels fine. I know it's just training camp. But the reports are that Andrew Luck was tearing it up. And that's what you want to see, that the rust isn't there. The question I have for Andrew Luck, because he said that there's no soreness in the shoulder outside of the usual fatigue of throwing however many passes it is that NFL quarterbacks throw in practice. If Andrew Luck feels good now, how does Andrew Luck feel during the season? How does Andrew Luck feel after he's taken a hit? How does Andrew Luck feel once someone's crushed him? Because it's not like this offensive line has gotten way better. It's gotten a little bit better, but it hasn't gotten way better. How does Andrew Luck feel? How does he cope with all of that? I don't know. And we won't know. There's a mental aspect of this. I was reading a story about Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford injured his knee a couple of seasons ago. He also injured his knee when he first entered the league also. But Sam Bradford just finally said that he stopped thinking about his knee when he was playing. That's crazy. He finally stopped thinking about his knee. I don't even, Like, it's injuries, they haunt you. They stay in your head. They stay in your mind. There's a psychological idea, right? Carl Jung was a psychologist. He came up with it. It's called altered reality space. An altered reality space is basically just your imagination, right? So if you are a person who lives out in the desert and you see a canyon, and in that canyon is nothing but darkness and shadow, you start to sweat a little bit and you don't go there. The reason why you don't go there is the altered reality space, where you imagine that maybe there's a lion or a tiger there, and that if you walk into that dark area that you can't see, you're going to be eaten. This is what happens when you're injured. You imagine everything can re-injure you. Your brain just does this for you. You're not even trying to do it on purpose. And it causes you to be gun shy. It causes you to psychologically not make the decisions that maybe you would have made if you weren't constantly thinking about being injured. Is Andrew Luck going to be stuck in that negative space where he's always wondering about, is he going to be re-injured? Every defensive lineman, because, man, you play the Titans. You don't think that Mike Vrabel's going to have that defense humming? Man, you play the Texans. If J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney are healthy, when they hit you, they're going to smack the stuffing out of you. You don't think Andrew Luck's going to think about that? You play the Jacksonville Jaguars. Marcellus Wiley on that defense. I mean, it's just, you just see that defense. It's horrifying. It's completely, absolutely horrifying. You don't think that those guys are going to try and take their shots at Andrew Luck? They know it's the throwing shoulder that's hurt. I mean, that's tough. That's real tough. And maybe Andrew Luck has got the mental fortitude to push through it, because he's a transcendent quarterback when he's healthy. But I've seen a lot of quarterbacks not push through it. Derek Carr's older brother, David Carr, when he was the quarterback of the Houston Texans. The Texans didn't have a great offensive line when he got drafted, and David Carr is still, to this day, the most sacked quarterback in a single season in NFL history. And you could see it in the way that he started to play. Here's a guy who's a solid quarterback coming out of college, and he was completely gun shy. He was seeing ghosts. He was hearing footsteps everywhere. He couldn't trust his arm because he thought that if he held on to the ball for any reasonable amount of time, he was going to get sacked. How do you not think about a shoulder like that when you haven't played the game in a year and change? How do you not think about the shoulder? How does that not haunt you? And like I said, Andrew Luck might be more mentally tough than I'm giving him credit for. Because I don't know. It would haunt me. I'm really speaking as like a normal person. Like it would haunt me. I've injured my knee before. And it took me forever to get to a point, because I play pickup basketball on the weekends. It took me forever to get to a point where my knee wasn't the most worrying thing in my life. And that every decision that I made wasn't going to re-injure my knee. And then I did re-injure it playing pickup basketball. And it took me forever again to mentally get over the fact that I might hurt myself again. And so you take it easy where normally you used to push. Andrew Luck used to step into throws. Andrew Luck hung in the pocket way longer than probably he ever should have, waiting for routes to develop. Can he do it? Does he still have the mental capacity? Does he still have the mental fortitude to do it? I'm not sure. This isn't the same as Deshaun Watson's injury. Deshaun Watson tore his ACL, but Deshaun Watson's torn his ACL before. Also, Deshaun Watson's ACL tear, non-contact injury. But Deshaun Watson's not going to be seeing the same ghosts that Andrew Luck is. Marcus Mariota's been injured before, but Marcus Mariota's never missed an entire season. Marcus Mariota usually gets injured near the end of the season, and a lot of times he comes back to finish the season out. He has missed minimal playing time. A lot of these quarterbacks in this division have been injured, have been dinged up. But Andrew Luck's injury is arguably the worst of all the injuries. And it's easy to do it in practice. I don't want to say easy, like easy relative to those guys. Like it's not going to be like I can't throw like that. But it's easy to brush past that in practice. Guys aren't really allowed to hit the starting quarterback in practice. I've read stories where teams protect their starting quarterback. You find the guy that hits your starting quarterback. I think Mike Zimmer in Minnesota actually has that rule. They just signed Kirk Cousins for $75 million guaranteed bucks. I mean, you lay a finger on Kirk Cousins, you'll be fined out of the Vikings facility. You'll be given that check back so fast, it'll make your head spin. You can't touch Kirk Cousins. Andrew Luck is the franchise. You think they're going to let Andrew Luck get hit in practice? So he knows he's not going to get hit. You're not hearing the footsteps then, but if he takes a couple of shots, can he hang in there? Does it bother him? Does he take the same shots? Does he take the same beating? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, but he is in one of those crazy places that you can really only be in when you're a guy that's come back from an injury that serious, but your value is that high. It leaves us in a position where we don't know, and honestly, I don't think Andrew Luck knows either, but he's going to go out there and he's going to try his best. You're listening to All New Nougat Radio, NougatRadio.com, here on 92.7 FM. Remember, folks, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. I'll see you in 23 hours. Stay well.